Good evening and welcome. Today we are being influenced by a man. He is an Englishman. He is like Jesus with Ableton. He is a carpenter of sound. His attention is only on the low end of the frequency spectrum. It is, of course, Subfocus. Wow, that was good, right? Let's have a little listen from the beginning, shall we?
I'm with you, like the moon, with the sun, out of time. Oh, I see you, like the gold, with the day, always torn. Your leg go that's moving through the night. Your leg go that's moving through the night. Your leg go that's moving through the night. Your leg moved me that was lost in time. Your leg go in time.
Very nice. Let's break it down. We are in A sharp minor, and we're starting off with the chord pattern of F minor to F sharp major to A sharp minor to G sharp major. So we've got pretty basic triads here. Normally you'd see it in this sort of pattern. So we have the root here, and then lower octave of the root, third up, and then the fifth up, and the same for all four of these. However, in this way of stacking the notes, it tends to sound a little bit dull, a little bit dark, and a little bit boring, like this. All the frequencies are quite close together, they're sounding a bit messy. Doesn't sound that great, so I tend to put the thirds up an octave, so it'll sound like this. Sounds way better to me. Your ear tends to pick out the higher notes, and that's the melody that it tends to hear out the chord. And when it's a third, the octave up, it just has a little bit more of a melodic feel, feels a little bit more emotional. Just a couple of saw waves on that patch. It's a deep house patch that I found. Very, very simple. 8 unison, 1 unison. 1 octave down, 2 octaves down. Lovely. Then we've got an ARP. So we're in A sharp here, so we're starting on the C sharp, going down to the C, A sharp, G, F, D sharp. This just sounded more melodic. Tried a load of different variations of this ARP, and this one just sounded good. I tried a couple of times doing it from octave to octave, so starting on the C and then ending up on the C with some sort of variation in between. And it just sounded a little bit dull. So switching up a little bit, so you're not just starting on one note and ending on one note, especially not the root as well. So this just sounded best to me. And the patch is super, super simple. It's just one saw wave. Couple of things that are working really well on this is this LFO is affecting the level. So it just helps give the notes a little bit of movement. So without that. And with. Just gives it a little bit of a flick and a little bit of sort of less static rhythm. And then the second thing is this portamento. It has a glide in between all those notes, just gives it so much more character to it. And then a little bit of hyper dimension, bit of compression, bit of delay, reverb. little bit of EQ, and then OTT on that afterwards. Bit of auto pan just to ping it back and forth between left and rights, and a reverb. Lovely. In Subfocus's tune with Dimension, which influenced this first half of the song, they have a little flute in the intro. So I thought I'd do the same thing. Just gives it a really lovely sort of organic feel to it. And in a lot of these drum and bass tunes, you start off with a hat in the intro. So we're just doing the downbeats there, one on the start of every bar. And I've got these tops sent to a drum room as well. So you can hear that drum room is quite loud in the intro. And then once it starts to get into the build, I've taken the loudness of the drum room down a little bit just to free up a little bit more room going into the drop. And I'm just using the drum room preset in Ableton's reverb and just play around the decay a little bit. I've taken out some of the low end and it sounds great. So I definitely recommend using that preset and playing around with that one. And then just into the next section, I'm taking the EQ of that up down a little bit just to help the transition. And at the same time as those are being filtered out, I'm bringing in a reverse crash and this sort of horn thing as well. So there's movement going on from a few different elements of the track. So while this one's slowly dying out, there's new ones being introduced. So in this next section, I'm just introducing a couple of layers of strings, doing the exact same MIDI. One's a Nexus, big drama strings, very dramatic. I watched one of Subfocus's interviews on YouTube, and he said that he tends to use this Emulator 2 Marcato strings quite a lot in his productions. So I realised I had it, so I thought I'd stick that in just to give it a little bit more of a Subfocus sprinkle to it. So this is the first real change of the song. We have an M1 piano in drum and bass. What's going on? The only change in the chords, obviously there's a rhythmic change, but instead of starting on the F minor, we've gone down to the D sharp minor. And then all of the rest of the chords are exactly the same. So that is the M1 house piano with all the reverbs inside the M1 being taken off. A little bit of OTT on there, bit of an EQ. M1 can sometimes sound a little bit dull. So it just brightens it up a little bit of compression. And I've taken the attack up a little bit just to give it a little bit more snap. And then there's a low piano as well. Sometimes the low frequencies in the M1 aren't that great. So I've got this Phoenix piano in Nexus. Just adding a tiny bit of body to that. And then we've got a house high string in there. So to transition into this build, we're starting off with a WOM, which is a sound that is inspired from his Solar Systems tune, I think it's called. It's a very good sound. I actually saw on YouTube, he runs through the making of that song. He actually made this sound in Massive, and I thought there was absolutely no way I'm going to be able to do that in Massive. So he did it in Serum, of course. It looks complicated when you see the movement, how the LFOs are affecting all the parameters, but actually it's fairly simple. So we've got two saw waves. The fine tune of each has just been separated just a little bit. 14 on one, minus 11 on the other. 16 unison, and then 8 unison, and then a little bit of detune as well, and just a tiny bit of noise. And then this BN12 is the filter to use. And I learnt this on YouTube, by the way. So there's some great tutorials on how to recreate these kinds of sounds. So this LFO is affecting the cutoff and the frequency. So we're on about 35, 68%. So we're doing a hill shape on 1/4. And the LFO is also affecting the frequency of this little notch here as well on the EQ. Just gives it loads of movement when the trigger is being hit. And then this LFO is affecting the coarse pitch of both these oscillators as well. So this is what's going on with all the LFOs in the matrix, if you want to copy that. And then distortion, bringing it out a lot, a bit of compression, bit of a filter on there. And then I noticed on his YouTube video, he puts a Pro R on there as well. So these are almost the exact settings that he used on the Solar System track. And I just stuck a decapitator on there as well. So to get into that sound, we've got a reverse just to help introduce it, because it's the first time we're hearing that sound in the song. So if you don't know how to do that, we'll just copy this by itself away from the song. So we just have one hit, and then we'll stick a reverb on there. I'm going to duplicate it so we don't lose these settings. Bring the mix up, bring the space up if you want. So you have a nice long tail, and then you create another audio track, and where it says X in here, you find the track you want to reverse. In this case, it is 1-1. Then we hit record on that. Highlight, press R to reverse, and there we go. A lovely reverse tail. Beautiful. So that will help our transition into this next sound. So just to help build a little bit of tension, I put a saw lead in there as well. These are the notes. Again, super simple patch. Saw wave, unison on 4, bit of detune, a little bit of hyperdimension, distortion, and EQ. And the thing that helps it in this instance is the pitch bends. So it just helps glide through each of those notes. So without that, very straight, very boring. So we have these glides. The bend range down is -2, bend range up is 7. I did it 7 because I wanted it to feel like a riser going into the drop. In the build, we've got a break. A snare comes in as a little build, and we're just opening up the EQ cutoff there. And then we've got a couple of crashes going into the drop. So the drums in the drop. So quite often you'll find a drum and bass pattern, the kick would normally only do this. Boot get, boot get, boot get, boot get. But Subfocus in quite a few of his songs does this rhythm. Boot get, boot get, boot get. So you can stick that in, give it a little bit of Subfocus vibe to it. So on top of that kick, we've got a snare. Just got a satin on that, just taking up the highs just a tiny bit, just to help it cut through. And then a really toppy snare, same thing again, just to help it snap through the mix a little bit. And then a very straight hat there as well. And then we've got a top doing a very similar thing. This one you can see the velocities are different on each of those hits, so it helps give it just a little bit of humanness. I noticed in a few of Subfocus's tunes, he has on a few occasions played a crash at the same time the snares are hitting, so like this. Doesn't always work that well, but in this instance it did. And then we've got another top on there as well. And then a little break just to break up the end of the first drop into the second half of that drop. on all of those tops, not including the kick, I've got a glue compressor on there. It's hitting quite hard, but the dry wet is down quite a lot. And then a K clip on there to help shave off some of those peaks. So the bass in the drop consists of a pretty standard rhythm. I noticed on one of Subfocus's interviews on YouTube, he talks about using a triangle wave as his sub. So that is literally the only thing I'm using as a sub here. So it's got nothing on it, just taking out some of the highs, and that's the only thing the sub is doing. And on top of that, we've got a mid bass. We're just carving out the low ends for that sub to come through. This actually is one of the first ever serum patches I ever made. So this has been here for a long time, and I was listening to one of his tunes while in the process of making this, and it really reminded me of this patch, so I thought I'd have to whip it out. We've got a Monster 1, and Envelope 2 is affecting this cutoff and the wave position. A little bit distortion, crunching it up. Compressor, filter, EQ, bit of hyperdimension. And then this top bass is actually the same one I used on the Dimensions video. It's a Juno and Basic CJW, pan hard left and right. So we've got quite a bit of processing on there as well. And then we've got an erosion on there just to crunch it up. And the way you can think about the panning of these three is I've noticed in Subfocus's tunes, when he's got a bass like this, quite often the high end will be wide in the stereo field, and then it'll gradually get more central the lower down the frequency spectrum. So you can kind of imagine it as a V in your mind. So the tops are wide, and then they come together in the center at the low end. And I had a bass one shot that I'm using just as a little bit of an accent to keep it a little bit more interesting. So I'm gradually building the pitch, and then I'm opening the cutoff of the EQ, and then I've got an Endless Smile on there as well that's opening up. So it just helps give the bass a little bit of movement, something a little bit more interesting in there. And we're doing a similar thing with the sub. I'm just putting a couple of the notes at the end of the phrase an octave higher, where there's some little pauses in the lead and the synths. It just helps give it a little bit of differentiation with the bass, so it's not just a that carries on. Helps it move on a little bit, and it's easier for the bass to feel less boring when it's not just static the whole way through. The bass is sidechained to the kick. It looks a little bit complicated because there's loads of kickstarts, and I probably could have done this a little bit more simple, but I've got this one kickstart that's on 67%, so that's affecting the whole of the frequency range, is ducking out 67%. This one is only affecting below 150 hertz, and that's doing 100. So all of the lows are being 100% sidechained by the kick. The rest of the signal is being sidechained just 67%. So that means you still get some of those highs coming through in the bass. It helps you to hear the whole of the bass, so it's not just kick and then bass. The bass feels a little bit more natural. So with the synths, we're using this same synth as in the build-up. We've got it an octave lower this time. A little bit of erosion on there with a sine to grit it up a little bit more. And we just got that at the start and halfway through the drop. And this lead is the main thing that we're hearing. This is two basic CJWs. Both on 5 unison, and one fine tuning's up by 10. And the thing that gives this sound a lot of its character is the wobble in the master tune. So in the Matrix, LFO 2 is affecting the master tune. I've just turned it up by 3 and then turned the output down quite a lot. And then the auxiliary source is envelope 2. So envelope 2 got a slow attack. So it means it takes a while for the wobble to come in. So it starts off pretty straight and then the wobble slowly comes in. So it gives it so much movement. This LFO is affecting the cutoff of this little notch, so it just helps give a little bit of character to the sound. So without those two, Nice sound, but it's lacking that little bit of something. And then this portamento is super important as well. So on 220 milliseconds on that. And we've got compressor, distortion, reverb on that. And then just wanted to beef it up a little bit more. So I've got an OTT, bit of compression, Ableton's overdrive and erosion, just to keep the sound moving and feeling alive. I've automated the amount of the white noise. So there's no white noise playing here, and then slowly it comes in, comes back out, and then slowly it comes in. So it just helps to give it a little bit of life and a little bit of movement as that sound plays. And then I had this one shot that I've had for years and years. Reminds me of a Prodigy song, but had a little bit of a sub-focus feel to it as well. So that is literally just following the notes of this lead. So the notes of this lead are almost doing the opposite to what the bass is doing. So the bass is starting on D sharp and then slowly ascending. And I wanted to do the opposite direction for the lead. So if I play those two together. So it's like one's climbing up the stairs and one's climbing down. Actually, this D, I don't think is in key either, but I just love the sound of it, so I kept it in. And I've just got some little effects things going on. Yeah, they just give a little bit of life and variation as the drop goes on. And then the second half of the drop, I've got these plugs. Just a phasey patch that I found, doing the same chords as the piano in the pre and the same rhythm as these hats. So with these vocals, in a lot of sub-focus tunes, particularly in the verses and the build-ups, there's loads and loads of reverb on them, and they sound great. So I thought I'd try and emulate that. I've got an echo and a vintage verb on there as well. Quite a long decay.
Like the moon with the sun out of time.
And I've cut these up from this original song, just so it fit better with the vibe of these pianos. And I've actually echoed the word echo there. What a very clever boy. So I've just got a high cut on there that's slowly opening as the build goes on, just to increase that tension and open it up so you know something's coming. And then we're increasing the mix of the reverb as well. And then just for this little pre-vocal before the drop, we've taken the decay back down. Another thing I saw Subfocus doing in his interview was using a gate to give a little bit of a vocal stutter. So this tiny little chop in the drop just helps give it a little bit of a different vibe. So without that gate and with, just gives it a little bit of a chop. So the way you do that is open up the gate from Ableton stock, and then you would open this up, press sidechain, audio from, and the audio you would take it from would be a MIDI clip. So create MIDI, Command-Shift-T, and then if 60 is your new MIDI, that would be your input, and then you can just create any rhythm you want. You can just have fun with it. So every time that note is playing, the sound is being let through. and you just turn off the channel, so you don't actually hear it. So you just press that, and you get a lovely little skip. And there we have it, Sub Focus. What a man, what a producer. It's been great looking at all of his YouTube videos to get inspiration for his kind of production. So I definitely recommend searching it up on YouTube and getting it straight from the horse's mouth. Enjoy, and I will see you soon.